Pygmalion, one of the most famous plays written by George Bernard Shaw. First performed in 1913, this play is a brilliant social comedy that examines class differences, language, identity, and human transformation in early 20th century England. The story revolves around Eliza Doolittle, a poor flower girl whose life changes when Professor Henry Higgins, an expert in phonetics, decides to transform her speech and manners to make her appear like a lady from the upper class. Through this fascinating experiment, Shaw raises important questions about social status, education, dignity, and the way society judges people based on their accent and appearance. In this video, we will explore the author, plot, characters, themes, symbolism, critical interpretations, and the lasting significance of Pygmalion. Pygmalion is one of the greatest modern English plays written by George Bernard Shaw in 1912. It is not only an entertaining comedy but also a powerful social document that examines the problems and inequalities of society. At the center of the play is Eliza Doolittle, a poor flower girl who sells flowers on the streets of London. Her life changes when Professor Henry Higgins, an expert in phonetics, makes a bold claim that he can transform her into a refined lady simply by teaching her how to speak properly. Through this transformation, Shaw explores a very important question: does a person's worth depend on their character or on the way they speak and appear? The play successfully combines several literary elements. It contains realism because it presents ordinary people and real social issues. It offers social criticism by exposing the unfair class system of England. It uses comedy and satire to make serious issues entertaining and thought-provoking. It also contains feminist ideas because Eliza gradually develops independence and refuses to be treated as an object or experiment. Unlike many playwrights of his time, Shaw rejected sentimental drama that focused only on emotions and happy endings. Instead, he believed that theatre should educate people, challenge traditional beliefs, and encourage social reform. Therefore, Pygmalion is not just a story about a flower girl becoming a lady. It is a play about identity, dignity, social equality, and the power of education and language. To understand Pygmalion properly, we must first understand the age in which George Bernard Shaw lived and wrote. Shaw belonged to the late Victorian and Edwardian periods, a time of tremendous social, economic, and political change in England. Society was moving away from old traditions and entering the modern age. One of the most important developments was industrialization. Factories, machines, and new technologies transformed the economy. As industries expanded, capitalism also grew rapidly. Wealth was increasingly controlled by industrialists and business owners rather than by traditional land-owning aristocrats. At the same time, many people began questioning economic inequality. This led to the rise of socialism, a movement that advocated greater social justice and better opportunities for the working class. Shaw himself was deeply influenced by socialist ideas and believed that society should be fairer and more equal. Another significant change was the women's rights movement. Women were demanding better education, employment opportunities, and the right to vote. Traditional ideas about women's roles were being challenged. These changes are reflected in the character of Eliza Doolittle, who gradually becomes independent and asserts her own identity. The period also witnessed remarkable scientific progress. New discoveries and inventions encouraged people to rely more on reason, observation, and education rather than blindly accepting tradition. At the same time, rigid class barriers were beginning to weaken. Earlier, a person's social position was largely determined by birth. However, with the growth of the middle class, education and professional success became increasingly important. Many people were now able to improve their social status through hard work and learning. This rapidly changing society forms the background of Pygmalion. The play reflects a world where old class distinctions are being questioned, social mobility is becoming possible, and language and education are emerging as powerful tools for changing one's position in society. Through Eliza's transformation, Shaw shows both the opportunities and the limitations of this changing social order. To understand Pygmalion, it is important to know something about its author, George Bernard Shaw, one of the most influential playwrights in English literature. George Bernard Shaw was born in 1856 in Dublin, Ireland, and lived a remarkably long and productive life until 1950. During his lifetime, he witnessed enormous social, political, and technological changes, all of which influenced his thinking and writing. Shaw was not just a playwright. He was also a novelist, critic, essayist, public speaker, and social thinker. Before becoming famous as a dramatist, he worked as a journalist and theatre critic. These experiences sharpened his ability to observe society and criticize its weaknesses. Unlike many writers who focused mainly on entertainment, Shaw used literature as a platform to discuss social problems and encourage reform. One of the most important influences on Shaw's life was his membership in the Fabian Society. The Fabian Society was a group of intellectuals who believed in democratic socialism. Unlike revolutionaries who wanted sudden change, the Fabians believed that society should improve gradually through education, discussion, and political reform. The Fabian ideals can be summarized in 4 key principles: gradual reform, democratic socialism, social equality, and education-based progress. Shaw strongly believed that education could transform people's lives and reduce social inequalities. This belief is clearly reflected in Pygmalion, where education and language become tools for social mobility. For example, Eliza Doolittle's transformation is not achieved through wealth or noble birth. Instead, it is achieved through learning, training, and self-improvement. Through her journey, Shaw demonstrates his faith in education as a means of social advancement. Shaw's literary achievements were recognized worldwide when he received the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1925. The award honored not only his artistic excellence but also his intellectual contribution to modern thought and social criticism. Therefore, when reading Pygmalion, we should remember that Shaw was more than a dramatist. He was a reformer who used theatre to challenge social prejudices, question class distinctions, and promote equality and human dignity. His life and beliefs form the foundation of the ideas explored throughout the play. George Bernard Shaw is often described as a dramatist of ideas because he transformed theatre from a source of simple entertainment into a platform for discussing important social and intellectual issues. Before Shaw, many popular plays focused mainly on emotional melodrama, sensational events, and romantic stories designed to entertain audiences. Shaw believed that drama should do much more than make people laugh or cry. He argued that theatre should encourage people to think critically about society and question accepted beliefs. One of the most distinctive features of Shaw's drama is intellectual discussion. His characters do not merely act, they debate ideas. Through their conversations, Shaw presents different viewpoints and invites the audience to think independently. Another important feature is social criticism. Shaw exposes the inequalities, prejudices, and hypocrisies that exist within society. Rather than directly preaching to the audience, he uses humor, irony, and dialogue to reveal social problems. His plays are also based on realistic situations. Instead of kings, queens, or mythical heroes, Shaw often focuses on ordinary people facing real social issues. This realism makes his message more relevant and convincing. A further characteristic is debate-oriented dialogue. Many scenes in Shaw's plays resemble intellectual discussions where characters argue about politics, morality, education, class, and human relationships. These debates are not merely decorative, they form the heart of the drama. Instead of concentrating on emotional melodrama, Shaw focused on major social concerns such as class divisions, moral values, economic inequality, women's independence, and the power of language. He believed that these issues shaped people's lives far more than romantic fantasies. Pygmalion is one of the finest examples of this discussion drama. On the surface, it appears to be the story of a flower girl who learns to speak like a lady. However, beneath this simple plot lies a deeper discussion about social class, identity, education, gender equality, and the influence of language on human relationships. For example, Shaw asks an important question throughout the play: Is a person truly superior because of birth and social status, or is society simply judging people based on their accent and appearance? Through such questions, Shaw turns the stage into a place for intellectual exploration and social reflection. Therefore, Pygmalion is not just a comedy, it is a powerful drama of ideas that challenges audiences to rethink their assumptions about society and human worth. Another important aspect of George Bernard Shaw's writing is his use of satire. Shaw was not satisfied with simply describing social problems. He wanted to expose them, criticize them, and encourage people to change them. He used humor, irony, and wit as powerful weapons against the flaws of society. Shaw attacked what he saw as the hypocrisy of the upper classes. Many wealthy and respectable people claimed to be morally superior, but Shaw believed that their status often depended more on privilege than on genuine virtue. Through satire, he revealed the gap between appearance and reality. He also criticized false morality. Society often judged people according to external standards such as dress, speech, and social position rather than according to their character and actions. Shaw considered this deeply unfair. Another target of his satire was capitalism and the unequal social system it created. He was concerned about the way wealth and privilege gave some people opportunities while leaving others trapped in poverty. Shaw also mocked superficial refinement. He questioned the belief that speaking elegantly or following social etiquette automatically made someone superior. In his view, true worth came from intelligence, character, and humanity rather than polished manners. Class prejudice was another major target of his criticism. He challenged the assumption that people from lower social classes were naturally inferior to those born into wealth and privilege. In Pygmalion, these satirical attacks appear throughout the play. One of the clearest examples is society's habit of judging people by their accent. At the beginning of the play, Eliza is treated as inferior simply because of the way she speaks. Yet after her speech is changed, people suddenly accept her as a lady, even though she remains the same person inside. Shaw also satirizes society's obsession with manners and etiquette. The play suggests that people often care more about correct pronunciation and social behavior than about honesty, kindness, or intelligence. Another important satirical target is the artificial nature of social distinctions. Shaw demonstrates that class differences are often based on superficial signs rather than genuine differences in human worth. Finally, Shaw challenges patriarchal authority. Characters such as Higgins often assume that men have the right to control and direct women's lives. Through Eliza's growing confidence and independence, Shaw questions these traditional power relationships. Therefore, Pygmalion is not merely a comedy about language. It is a sharp social satire that exposes prejudice, mocks social pretensions, and encourages audiences to think critically about the values of their society. One of the reasons Pygmalion remains popular today is Shaw's masterful construction of the plot. Although the story appears simple on the surface, it is carefully designed to explore deep social and psychological issues. The first important feature of Shaw's plot is its simplicity. The central story is straightforward. A poor flower girl is trained to speak like a lady. However, behind this simple storyline lies a complex discussion about class, identity, education, and human dignity. Another feature is realistic progression. Every event develops naturally from what has happened before. There are no unbelievable coincidences or dramatic miracles. Eliza's transformation is shown as the result of months of hard work, discipline, and learning rather than magic or sudden luck. The plot also emphasizes psychological development. Shaw is not only interested in changing Eliza's speech, he is interested in showing how her mind, confidence, and self-respect develop. By the end of the play, the most important transformation is not external but internal. A distinctive aspect of the play is its anti-romantic ending. Most traditional dramas would end with the heroine marrying the hero. Shaw deliberately rejects this convention because he wanted audiences to focus on ideas rather than romance. Now let us look at the structure of the plot. The exposition occurs in Act 1. Here, Shaw introduces the main characters, Eliza Doolittle, Professor Higgins, and Colonel Pickering. We also learn about Higgins' remarkable ability to identify people's origins through their accents. Most importantly, the central experiment is established. Higgins claims that he can transform Eliza into a lady through speech training. The rising action takes place mainly in Acts 2 and 3. During these acts, Eliza undergoes rigorous training and is tested in social situations. The audience watches her gradual progress as she learns the language and manners of the upper class. The climax occurs at the embassy party. This is the decisive moment when Eliza successfully convinces high society that she belongs among them. Higgins wins his bet, and the experiment appears to be a complete success. However, Shaw introduces an unexpected falling action in Act 4. Instead of celebrating, Eliza experiences an emotional crisis. She realizes that Higgins has treated her as an experiment rather than as a human being. This leads to her rebellion and demand for independence. Finally, the denouement takes place in Act 5. Instead of providing a conventional romantic conclusion, Shaw leaves the ending open. The audience is encouraged to think about Eliza's future and the larger social questions raised by the play. Thus, Shaw's plot is much more than a transformation story. It is a carefully structured journey that moves from social experiment to personal awakening, making Pygmalion one of the finest examples of modern realistic drama. One of George Bernard Shaw's greatest strengths as a playwright is his art of characterization. His characters are not merely individuals who move the story forward, they are carefully created personalities that represent important social ideas and viewpoints. The first feature of Shaw's characterization is realism. His characters behave like real human beings with strengths, weaknesses, emotions, and contradictions. They are not perfect heroes or complete villains. Secondly, Shaw's characters are intellectual. They think, argue, debate, and express ideas. Much of the action in Shaw's plays takes place through conversation and discussion rather than through physical events. Another important feature is symbolism. Many characters symbolize broader social forces, beliefs, or institutions. However, Shaw never allows them to become mere symbols. They remain lively, believable, and psychologically convincing. Finally, Shaw's characters are socially representative. Each one reflects a particular class, profession, or social attitude found in contemporary society. Through them, Shaw examines the structure and values of the world around him. The central technique of Shaw's characterization is that his characters represent social ideas while still remaining fully human and realistic. This balance gives his plays both intellectual depth and dramatic appeal. Let us consider some examples. Professor Henry Higgins represents science, education, and intellectual brilliance. He is a genius in phonetics and possesses extraordinary knowledge. However, he also symbolizes intellectual arrogance. He often treats people as objects of study rather than as human beings with feelings. Through Higgins, Shaw explores both the power and the limitations of scientific thinking. Eliza Doolittle represents transformation, self-improvement, and self-respect. At the beginning, she is a poor flower girl struggling to survive. As the play progresses, she gains confidence, education, and independence. Her greatest achievement is not learning refined speech but discovering her own dignity and identity. Alfred Doolittle, Eliza's father, serves as Shaw's criticism of conventional morality. He is humorous, honest, and unconventional. He openly admits his weaknesses and refuses to pretend to be morally superior. Through Doolittle, Shaw satirizes society's double standards and challenges traditional ideas about respectability. Colonel Pickering represents kindness, humanity, and good manners. Unlike Higgins, he treats Eliza with respect from the very beginning. His behavior demonstrates an important lesson of the play. True gentility comes not from accent, wealth, or social status, but from treating others with courtesy and compassion. Therefore, Shaw's characters are much more than fictional figures. They are living embodiments of social ideas, and through their interactions, Shaw explores some of the most important questions about class, identity, morality, and human relationships. This richness of characterization is one of the reasons Pygmalion remains a masterpiece of modern drama. George Bernard Shaw is widely regarded as one of the greatest realist dramatists in English literature. Unlike many earlier playwrights who relied on romantic fantasies, improbable coincidences, and idealized characters, Shaw believed that drama should reflect real life and real social conditions. Shaw rejected romantic fantasy because he felt that it often distracted audiences from important social realities. Instead of presenting a dream world, he wanted theatre to confront people with the truths of everyday life. One of the most important realistic features of Pygmalion is its focus on ordinary people. The play does not center on kings, queens, or heroic warriors. Instead, it focuses on a flower girl, a language professor, a retired military officer, and a dustman. These are people who could easily be found in real society. The setting is also highly realistic. The action takes place in actual London locations, including Covent Garden, Higgins' laboratory-like home, and the homes of middle-class citizens. These familiar settings make the story believable and relatable. Another realistic feature is Shaw's use of real speech patterns. He carefully reproduces different accents and dialects to show social differences. Eliza's Cockney speech immediately identifies her working-class background, while the polished speech of the upper classes reflects their social position. This attention to language gives the play a strong sense of authenticity. The play also deals with genuine social issues. Rather than focusing on romance alone, Shaw examines problems such as social inequality, education, poverty, and prejudice. These were important concerns in Edwardian society and remain relevant today. Class conflict is another major realistic element. Throughout the play, we see how people are judged according to their social class and manner of speaking. Shaw exposes the unfairness of a society that values accent and appearance more than character and ability. Economic realities are equally important. Eliza's desire to improve her speech is not merely a personal ambition. She hopes to obtain better employment and a more secure future. Her struggle reflects the economic challenges faced by many working-class individuals. Therefore, Pygmalion presents life honestly rather than sentimentally. Shaw does not offer easy solutions or fairy tale endings. Instead, he presents society as it is, encouraging audiences to think critically about its strengths and weaknesses. Through this commitment to realism, Shaw transformed modern drama and made theatre a powerful instrument for understanding human life and society. One of the most enjoyable aspects of Pygmalion is George Bernard Shaw's brilliant use of wit and humor. However, Shaw's humor is very different from simple jokes or slapstick comedy. His humor is intellectual, meaning that it makes the audience think while it makes them laugh. Shaw uses humor as a tool to expose social weaknesses, challenge accepted beliefs, and criticize human behavior. Through laughter, he encourages the audience to question society and its values. One important feature of Shaw's humor is irony. Irony occurs when reality is different from what people expect. Throughout Pygmalion, Shaw creates ironic situations that reveal the absurdity of social conventions. Another feature is paradox. A paradox is a statement or situation that appears contradictory but contains an important truth. Shaw loved using paradoxes because they forced audiences to think beyond conventional ideas. Witty dialogue is also a hallmark of Shaw's style. His characters engage in clever conversations filled with sharp observations, unexpected remarks, and intelligent arguments. These exchanges make the play both entertaining and intellectually stimulating. Another source of humor is comic reversal, where situations develop in surprising and unexpected ways. Characters often achieve outcomes that are completely opposite to what society would predict. Let us look at some examples. One of the funniest examples is Alfred Doolittle. Most people dream of becoming wealthy, but Doolittle actually complains when he becomes rich. He feels that wealth brings responsibilities and social expectations that interfere with his carefree lifestyle. This reversal creates humor while also criticizing society's assumptions about success and happiness. Another example is Professor Higgins. Although he belongs to the educated upper class, he behaves more rudely than many ordinary people. He constantly insults others, ignores social conventions, and speaks without considering people's feelings. Shaw humorously suggests that education does not automatically make a person civilized. A third example occurs when Eliza successfully learns perfect upper-class speech. Society is impressed by her pronunciation and manners, yet she sometimes discusses inappropriate or ordinary topics in fashionable settings. The contrast between her refined language and her unconventional subject matter creates comic situations while exposing the superficiality of social judgments. Through such wit and humor, Shaw entertains his audience while delivering serious social criticism. His comedy is never merely for amusement. It encourages people to think about class, manners, education, and human behavior. This combination of laughter and intellectual insight is one of the reasons why Pygmalion remains a timeless and influential play. To better understand George Bernard Shaw's unique contribution to modern drama, it is useful to compare him with another important playwright of the same period, John Galsworthy. Both Shaw and Galsworthy were concerned with social problems and wanted drama to reflect real life. However, they approached these goals in very different ways. The first major difference is that Shaw uses intellectual satire, while Galsworthy relies on emotional realism. Shaw encourages audiences to think critically through wit, irony, and debate. Galsworthy, on the other hand, appeals more directly to the audience's emotions and sympathy. Another difference can be seen in the dialogue. Shaw is famous for his witty and clever conversations. His characters constantly challenge one another's ideas through argument and discussion. Galsworthy's dialogue is generally more serious and restrained, focusing on emotional situations rather than intellectual debates. The dramatic structure also differs. Shaw's plays are discussion-based. The central action often develops through the exchange of ideas. In Pygmalion, for example, many of the most important moments involve discussions about language, class, and identity. Galsworthy's plays are more plot-based. He places greater emphasis on events and situations, allowing the story itself to drive the drama. A further difference lies in their attitude toward social change. Shaw is generally optimistic about reform. He believes that education, intelligence, and social awareness can improve society. This optimism is evident in Eliza's transformation and growing independence. Galsworthy, while also concerned with social issues, often emphasizes social sympathy. He focuses on human suffering and injustice, encouraging audiences to feel compassion for those affected by social problems. Finally, Shaw is often described as anti-romantic. He deliberately avoids conventional romantic endings because he wants audiences to focus on ideas rather than emotions. In Pygmalion, he refuses to end the play with a simple love story between Higgins and Eliza. Galsworthy, by contrast, frequently presents realistic tragedies in which social circumstances lead to suffering and conflict. His plays often leave audiences with a sense of sadness and reflection. Therefore, while both playwrights contributed significantly to modern drama, Shaw stands out as a dramatist of ideas. His plays combine realism, satire, wit, and intellectual debate, whereas Galsworthy emphasizes emotional realism, social sympathy, and dramatic situations. Understanding this distinction helps us appreciate why Pygmalion is considered one of the greatest discussion dramas in English literature.